And welcome to your weekly interval. This is the Best Damn Nerd Show. I am your host, Microphone Alchemist Bimbo Jimbo, and with me tonight, Imperial Commissar Jeff Budd.
Full house, still top billing. Thank you.
With not malice aforethought, but with intention. Hall of Fame cyber athlete, Jonathan Craig.
Hey, everybody.
Professor from the School for Gifted Youngsters, Chris Davis.
Love seeing all these faces. Love it. Love seeing you guys.
CSO from Star Labs, Mark Truex.
How's it going, boys? Excited to be back.
Yeah, absolutely. Lore Master, Timothy Childs. Hello, Tim.
It's an audio podcast.
It's an audio podcast, Tim.
Hi, guys.
An audio
Jesus
podcast.
Christ.
You know, of all the invites that I second guessed, last but not least, final boss, Chris Seglia. How are you doing?
I quit.
Can't quit.
I'm done.
Your
This
final
is the
boss.
first and last time.
Looking at the forms that I filled out, I'm pretty sure that you're the only one that can't quit. You own the show. Anyway, welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show, everybody. This has been a long time coming. This is a reboot, as it were, of the show that we started back in 2009 at San Francisco State University. So I want to say off the top, thank you to all the listeners that supported us. We're so dedicated to our show over the years. In the lead up to this, I've discussed that with a few of you and just how much of a pleasure it was and what an unexpected sort of byproduct that was in terms of the community that we built through the original Best Damn Nerd Show. You know, thinking about guys like, the gay Florida nerd, Justin, and just so many others, Nerdy Gray. There's a lot of you out there, and also shout out to the last Starfighter, Joel Bailey, who started as a listener and now runs our social media channels and other things of that nature. So it's very cool to be back here with you. Our journeys have taken us, down some interesting paths, but, through, just happenstance, no reason, they all led back together here. Not because I'm sad and lonely. It has nothing to do with that. But let's find out how everybody's doing, because we're 11 years older than when we started this. What are you guys? Most of you are married. Davis, you're practically married. Me, this is a shoot. I got broken up with a few minutes before starting this show tonight, so I'm raring to go.
Coming in hot. I like the dedication.
I'm
Wait, is that real?
Stoked. That's real. That's 100% real.
You're like Sam Malone, and this is Cheers. You just have the podcast. That's your wife.
You and me were sitting here an hour ago before the show started, and then you went somewhere. Is that where you went?
That is exactly where I went.
Oh my
That's why I
God.
came back crying.
So, this is all I got, people. So let's make this one count.
What, you want you to move to Vermont?
You know what? What I will say is at least she had the decency to do it in close enough proximity that it could be a topic on the show, unlike Michelle, when I made her my girlfriend on it, but didn't have the decency to break up with me on it. So we're off to a great start here back at the Best Damn Nerd Show. It's...
And segment one of the show today is actually we're going to be reading the text conversations that led to this moment. So, James, if you could just click that up on the screen, please.
Yeah, let me just do a quick share screen here. Ignore the dick pics, and we'll be off to the races. But welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. Yes, Seglia.
What happened?
It's complicated, but
Just blame her, dude.
It is pretty much, yeah. Yes, Tim.
I just want to say it's hard to keep track of all the girls that you've dated and haven't slept with.
Again, of all the invites of the show that I was on the fence about in terms of reuniting, I mean, here Adam Zika, poor Adam Zika, our old executive producer, didn't get an invite.
But I'm sure Adam has read the text messages between you and your new ex.
No doubt about it. But I just thought I should bring that element of realism back into the program, as it were. You can't make this stuff up,
Oh my
Sometimes
God, I just spit water on my monitor. I don't think that's good for it.
It's fine. A little salty discharge on monitor electronics it never hurt anything. I'm talking about tears.
Oh my God.
But anyway, I want to.
We know where James is at. I think we're
so
caught up.
that's me. to catch everybody up, on who I am. I grew up a staunch nerd of all trades. Fell in love with Star Wars at a young age. Fell out of love with it at a middle age because the prequels suck, and somehow the sequel series is even worse.
When you say prequels, you mean episodes 4, 5, and 6 because those were released first.
That's what he means. Yes.
Okay, absolutely not. The one true trilogy of Star Wars, Empire Strikes Back, and Return of the Jedi are what I worship. But I left. When I left the show, I was James. Now I'm a Jimbo, and I love lots of nerdy stuff. But I wanted to get everybody reacquainted with one another. Mark, I've known, for those of you just joining us, since 4th grade. Mark, why don't you tell the audience a little bit about yourself?
I remember it was 5th grade that we met.
Ooh.
And I absolutely cherish it. James and I grew up loving all kinds of nerdy things. So together playing Legend of the Five Rings, together playing Star Wars, a customizable card game, watching wrestling, making our own comic book studio. You name it, we did it together growing up and fell into that. Still to this day, huge comic book nerd. Gonna edit that out in post. Gonna edit that out in post.
Nord from Skyrim. Makes sense. You're a Nord.
Really
You're
into
a Nord.
the DC universe. Still into Star Wars. Even liked some of the sequel trilogy.
No, it's crap.
Throw it out there.
Part, moron.
Yeah, all the good stuff. There's like starships and powers. Good
magic.
Good character arcs.
Princess Leia, Mary Poppinsing through space. That was great. Idiot.
Yeah, in it for life. In it for life. Excited to be back, boys.
That's great. Oh, we're happy to have you back. And like I said, this is a full boat. We're not going to have this many nerds on at one time, but it is nice to have us all assembled at once. Jeff, an original of the Best Damn Nerd Show. Why don't you reintroduce yourself? I mean, you're a favorite of so many listeners, but
Very
reintroduce yourself to the new ones. Yeah, all the exit polls say it's you.
Yeah, exactly. I would say what I grew up really being into was superheroes, mostly comic books, action figures, cartoons. Growing up in the 90s was really kind of friendly for that sort of thing. I got into sword and sorcery because of He-Man, and then later Conan the Barbarian, and then of course like Games Workshop and all the Warhammer stuff, which is why I go by Commissar because I like Warhammer 40k. Star Wars, I think all of us at least one time or another were Star Wars fans, so I like all of that too. And then I got into anime in high school, so that as well.
What kind?
Like specific titles or something like that? I think Dragon Ball Z is the gateway anime drug for most Americans, and then it became like Naruto, but that's past our time.
Yeah. Well, it is good to have you back, Jeff, and I can't imagine the Best Damn Nerd Show without you. So
neither can I.
Yeah, I mean, there was that one time
there was plenty of times
when you fought in the Great Spice War, and you had a little bit of a hiatus. You were serving the Federation, so we appreciate that. Hall of Fame cyber athlete, formerly agent of the Kieran Tor, Jonathan Craig. How have you been? Just reintroduce yourself and why the switch here? I guess you're just explain that a little bit.
I think it's a little bit more generalist. I mean, I don't have like the same knowledge of comic books and some of the like anime and nerd categories that you guys do, but I definitely come at this from like the nerdy gamer point of view. Specifically, like competitive gaming has always been
which
my
you were
thing.
Inducted into the Hall of Fame, so congratulations on that.
Yep, recent inductee. It feels really good. It still doesn't stop 14-year-olds from trolling me. I recently was playing a game of Counter-Strike, and a 14-year-old told me that I'm probably poor and I probably live in an apartment.
Probably with a neighbor that shakes back and forth very creepily.
Cut me pretty deep, mostly because it's true. So, to kind of look at my life and be 32 years old and have 14-year-olds hurt my feelings like that, it's tough.
God, you're only 32.
But I do, I'm a dad now, recent dad. Well, 16 months ago.
Davis is just learning about this.
You have a kid?
God, you got me in a lot of trouble there, bud.
John, another one of the married ones.
John had to explain to his wife, one of my dearest friends is a moron. All right, so-
It's weird. Yeah, she hadn't learned that yet. But I think one of the coolest things about that, and I know Mark can probably speak to this too, like you get to kind of like re-explore and like re-enjoy a lot of these things with your child. So like recently we've been watching a ton of stuff on Disney, but we watched a couple of episodes of the Nickelodeon Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle show and a couple other things, and like we've been watching like Clone Wars, the series. So it's been fun to kind of like go on this journey with him. And I know, once he's old enough to enjoy games, I'm going to have to just shame him every day with dad's strength.
I do want to continue going around the horn here with everybody's reintros, but you mentioned, Davis there, and I really appreciate Davis's introduction to me and Jeff specifically, and in the confines of the group, because John, Davis, and Tim used to all live together in an apartment in San Francisco. And my first introduction to Chris Davis was the roommate that hid plates underneath his bed. And so for the first
if I may actually,
you may.
There was a period of time, and it was very troubling because Tim and I were both very concerned for Davis during this period of time, because we, again, like you said, we lived with him, and day by day we would see more and more plates just disappear from our kitchen. We had no idea where they went. We thought, honestly, we were concerned about our safety. What if someone's breaking in and stealing our plates slowly over time?
It was a slow grind on my part.
Until one day we decided, what the hell's going on? And we went into Davis's room, and it turns out he had a box of our plates under his bed, like a psychopath. No, totally unprovoked. Absolutely no reason at all.
Collecting DNA.
I thought that as well. I once bought the John and Tim narrative about Davis being a psychopath, because I only heard about this roommate that was hiding plates under his bed. And keep in mind, I still was relatively fresh out of, where I grew up, still in college and everything like that. So I was like, is this just something that weird people do? Like, man, what a terrible luck of the draw to get this kind of strange behavior from a roommate. And I grew up in a town with, only one stoplight. So I was just like, man, I guess I was really lucky to not be exposed to all these, strangos in the world. But then as I got to know Tim and John a little bit more, it became very apparent that there was a reason for why Davis was doing this. And he was, in fact, the only sane man living in an insane world. So Davis, if you can take it from there and then reintroduce yourself. Why did you hide the plates?
I hid the plates because they would mount up. Like, everybody's had this roommate situation where your roommates don't clean all the time, and somebody
don't
has
pull any
to.
punches, Davis.
And that ecosystem was unstable, and something needed to be done. So I had to take these plates away. And let's get this straight too. This was our second apartment living together. We started in the dorms. And my first introduction to these guys, as I move in, the campus-wide fire alarm is going off because they burned a grilled cheese sandwich.
It was a quesadilla.
They didn't know how. It's bread and cheese, man. It's bread and cheese.
Easy
That's a
mistake.
Mexican grilled cheese sandwich.
Easy mistake. We put butter into a hot pan, and everyone's done it.
I should have known right then and there.
I never knew that.
The fire department arrived like 60 seconds before Davis did.
Look, that was a slow escalation. The first thing that we got from Chris was a note on our pillows in our fucking dorm room that said, "Clean your shit up."
Wow.
And we thought it was Omar, our other roommate, because he didn't like us either.
No, he didn't like Davis. He loved us.
He wouldn't tell me that to my face, though.
I mean, I feel like it's a safe assumption.
I mean, did you explain to them why you were doing this, or did you just do it?
I just did it. And what I did was there was 3 bowls, 3 plates, 3 knives, 3 forks, 3 spoons, and 1 pot, 1 pan. So there was still enough for everyone. You just had to wash it more often if you needed something clean.
Can I just say how incredibly selfish of Davis this was? Because at the time, you have to understand, Tim and I were both in very hardcore progression rating guilds in World of Warcraft. We didn't have time. We simply didn't have the time to wash every dish. We didn't. So the fact that Davis was going out of his way to utilize more of our time, which we should have been using grinding for reagents, raising our item level, running heroics. I mean, he took that from us.
No, he didn't, because that was, we did those things. We didn't do the dishes. We did those things. So he didn't take time from us at all.
True. We just started eating out for every meal.
Yeah, we were like, fuck it, we don't need dishes. No, dude, we bought fucking paper plates, and we just would throw them away every meal.
Yeah, it's amazing.
Everything worked itself out.
To this day,
you moved out. You left them.
Yeah, like I said, it worked itself out.
Life finds a way.
Davis, beyond what you had to do to survive in that household, just tell the audience a little bit about yourself. I mean, they probably know enough already now.
Growing up, I was more on the hard video game front, not just console, and mostly RPG, first-person shooter, and eventually probably didn't get into comics and board games until high school. Where I had a couple friends introduce me to a bunch of things, mostly on the Marvel Dark Horse side. So got into those. And then once college came around, I met you guys, and it's been a spiral down ever since. Most of my money now goes to a board game habit that I can't stop. I read a lot more comics, and
sorry, Davis. Jeff is the board game guy on this show, so I'm going to need you to stop collecting those. We already got one. So
actually, I'm just a Shadows of Brimstone guy now.
That is true. You change businesses.
Also, Chris, you don't read comics. They're pictures, okay? It's like you just look at the pictures. We all know you don't read the comics.
You know, there's certain writers I like more because it's more about the images.
Visual storytelling.
It's
better.
As old as time.
It's better that way.
Davis is more into comics that focus on sound effects in text bubbles.
Kablooey!
Yeah, like the letterer's contributions with a pow and zam.
As long as I don't have to read out loud, everything's fine.
Seglia, you are the final boss. Tell the listeners, and the cool thing is, I mean, Segs is another one that I would term sort of the giant-sized X-Men issue of Best Damn Nerd Show from back in the day. You know, not on the first one, but certainly part of the classic lineup, like Davis is. And you know, you joined on very early with the Best Damn Nerd Show at SF State.
Second episode he came in.
Yeah. Wow. I see. I didn't even know that.
That's when I met him. I met him on air.
Yeah.
I'll always remember that.
Yeah, there it is.
Yeah, there's actual recording of Seglia and I meeting. I mean, it's lost forever, but
yeah.
No such recording. I don't know what you're talking about.
But I mean, welcome back. And just tell the listeners a little bit. I mean, your tendrils are all over the Nerdosphere.
I don't do that much.
Good intro.
Yes, you do.
I thought I was a huge nerd before I met you guys. Actually, I was like, man, I like video games. I like cartoons and like stuff like that. And then that second episode of Best Damn Nerd Show, which is now lost forever, I couldn't fucking believe how much of a nerd I wasn't. So I had to step my game up. Now I own and operate 10O LLC, which is basically where you're listening to this thing here. We do a lot of white label broadcasts throughout the gaming world, like for StarCraft, for Twitch. I Play Winners, the first ever Twitch partner that we don't really get anything for. I just like to say it out loud. But we mostly do like fighting games for like Evo and Tekken World Tour, and then Nintendo's competitive side, the competitive play, and Pokemon and all that jazz. I was huge into competitive games. In high school, I was a pro, or at least I thought I was, in a game called SOCOM 2 for PlayStation 2. And now I'm just a pro Stardew Valley player, and I play Valorant with John Craig every once in a while.
A couple things on that is that, one, I mean, 10O is the brand name for anything fighting game and anything podcast. So, if you ain't 10O, you ain't shit as far as I'm concerned. But, there's my plug for the day. Yeah, there it is. Let me just... And also, I also thought it was a travesty that John is in the competitive gaming Hall of Fame, but not you. So that to me just seems like a total miscarriage of justice.
this is going to be my first and last time on camera, so I understand.
No, Segley's going to get a Lifetime Achievement Award. I have to say, a couple years
That's
ago...
what a Hall of Fame induction is!
Yeah. Well, for different reasons, though. I remember when we were in college, Segley was bringing, like, this... I was looking at it like a hodgepodge bag of PC parts and like production parts to these local fighting game tournaments, and like basically figuring out with a handful of other people like how to stream video games live when nobody else was really doing it. And a couple years ago, I went to Evo. Like Segley and I don't really talk about like career stuff that much. A couple years ago, I went to Evo, which is this giant fighting game, the biggest fighting game tournament in the world and convention in Las Vegas. And I met up with Segley there, and he had to go do something. And I was talking to one of the guys that works for him, and I was like, so what is Segley's role in all this? What does he do? And the guy was like, oh, he runs all the broadcasts here. And it's like, I'm looking around and there's like 15 giant screens all around with like, you know, a ton of different tournaments happening. Sunday is like this giant arena production that streams out to 250,000 people concurrently and millions of people over the course of the weekend, like Super Bowl level stuff. And it's crazy, like having flashbacks to like 2008, 2009 when Segley was like first piecing this together, and watching the progression has been just mind-blowing, really.
Yeah, it really is. And like I said, you know, Tenno, the preeminent figure in all things nerd as far as I'm concerned, in podcasting and fighting game streaming, just really the top.
James, I don't think you get a bonus. I don't think you get a bonus for
the tippy top as far as I'm concerned. But it's funny, you know, Segs was mentioning that, you know, he didn't consider himself a nerd. I remember when we started this show, and you know, we were doing our thing and we were in a good groove, and my dad pulled me aside. He's like, are you a nerd? And I was like, yeah, I grew up loving comic books, Star Wars, Star Trek, you know, fantasy, all this stuff. Like, what about, like, I don't play sports. Like, I love sports, but athletic ability waved bye-bye to me at a very early age. So I burrowed into the fantasy side of things. But Timothy Childs, Lore Master, a few things to dissect with you. Formerly head boy, have you eschewed your love of Harry Potter?
Yeah, I have recently realized that Harry Potter is garbage, so that's sort of something I'm dealing with. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I would say, like, I'm not a traditional nerd either, in the sense that, like, I didn't grow up, like, in the board games and the comics like you guys. I think that's kind of, like, dumb bullshit, and I just don't really adhere to it. That being said, I grew up pretty much liking Harry Potter and Lord of the Rings. Lord of the Rings is the only thing you need, I've come to realize recently. Everything is based off of it, and yeah, you don't need to go before it, you don't need to go after it. Lord of the Rings is all there is, and World of Warcraft. And yeah, so, you know, I did like maybe 3 episodes back in the day. I was the head boy. Since then, I almost graduated college after that, and I think I've had a successful career in spite of that. I've had a series of odd jobs. The most recent
how much
of which
do you
was,
use your
what?
How much do you use your reading degree?
Well, I didn't actually get it, so it was basically just money in the hole.
Yeah.
I
actually believe that.
No, I got it.
Is that true?
No, well, no, I haven't. I don't know.
Okay. Well, I want to ask you about your title of Lore Master as well, Tim, because why did you pick that?
What's my favorite title in World of Warcraft is the title I'm most proud of, and the one that I think you never got. I think they took that title away.
So one of my most nerdy attributes is that I usually obsess over a given property's lore, like the backstory of characters, you know, side characters, minor plot points. You know, in Skyrim, I, on my own, at that time, now subsequently they've added more info, but at this time when Skyrim was out, diving down my own rabbit hole about the Rorikstead conspiracy. Look it up. It's a real thing. But I obsess about the lore, and when I first got into World of Warcraft, what I loved most about World of Warcraft were the quests and the lore of that world, and there was nothing I coveted more than the title of Lore Master, and it was something that I was chasing for a long time, and I was trying to get before the expansion Cataclysm came out because they were going to change the parameters for it. And then Tim just decided he was close enough and just wanted to get it before I did.
And for context, the way you get Lore Master is by completing all the quests in every zone until the max level. James's way of doing that, not necessarily an efficient way, but definitely a way that showcases his love and appreciation for lore, is to read every quest dialogue that comes up, every side quest, and really like kind of role play his way through the game.
Yes.
Tim's approach, a little different. Tim's approach, I think Tim just turns on the feature to not even have the text like show up. He just like clicks through. It's like essentially speed running.
Let me ask you a question, John. Let me ask you a question. Who's the lore master here? Who's the lore master here?
Hey, I'm not knocking the method. I'm just
ask me a question
Not
about
so
lore.
much the lore, it's the loot.
Ask me anything about lore. I can answer it. Go.
Doubt it.
Tell
Ask
me
me a
about
question.
Hogger.
Tell me about Hogger. This is a great question.
Vale of
Segs.
Straws birthed him in the sanctum of the goddess, and he currently roams in the Vale of Eternal Blossoms.
Is that a real thing?
Yeah.
I don't think
Look it
that's
up, bro.
real.
I'm not looking.
Look it up, dude.
Do we know
Anybody
that?
want to fact check
Tim?
that? Or is
Tim?
he the lore master?
Craig,
Right,
can you
Tim's
I'm a
Fact
lore
fact check?
master. I'm a lore master. You don't need to look it up. I am
That's
the lookup.
definitely not accurate.
Tim is one of the
Tell
only
me
people I
about the
know.
motivation. Tell me about the motivation of the pirates and the dead mines.
Booty. What do you mean? They're pirates.
Story checks out. Check and mate.
Fucking idiot. I'm a lore master, man.
Tim's one of the only people I know that like never really gave up on WoW. Like I think there was one expansion that he didn't play, whereas like other people have kind of come and gone, or just completely gave up after those first couple expansions. But now Tim's at the point where like nothing about the game is fun. It's just purely like a collection experience. So like he basically has a max level character of every different playable character, and he like logs them out strategically outside of raids, and he'll log on for like 15 minutes every week just to do those old raids to try to get the mounts. And of course they're ridiculously low mount drop percentages, so he doesn't get them, and then he just logs off and waits till next week. Like he's not his experience playing the game now is so different than like 99.9% of players.
It's very mechanical now, and I should point out that my World of Warcraft character Kincadius and Tim's main at the time, Sionin, were married in game, which was cool.
Yes, Sion was a female Tauren, which is a cow in that game.
No,
So,
she was a
just so
female
y'all know.
night elf. She was a female night elf, and I played Alliance, and I was very against Tim turning my wife into a Tauren. And one day, Tim just texts me, Sionin says moo, with a screenshot of her as a Tauren. And yeah, I was not pleased.
It's such a perfect, like nothing is sacred to Tim in World of Warcraft or in life.
Meanwhile, how I played was every time I logged off, I would slash Neil facing whatever direction Stormwind was, because that's where my character was from, and I always missed home.
You guys could not
So-
be more opposite.
Yeah, I never understood that. That behavior actually concerned me.
James made me quit World of Warcraft because I was like, all right, I'll play with you, James. And it took like literally 4 hours to complete one quest because
I
he was
enjoyed it.
reading
Yeah.
every single thing out loud. And I was like,
Honestly, I
We
never
can't do this
understood
shit.
why James didn't play on an RP server. Like
Because I wanted to play with you guys.
well,
And also, how the game was introduced to me was shocker after a breakup, and it was like literally I was at John and Tim's apartment, and I was sad, as I often am. And John approached me. He's like, "Hey, man, like, why don't you try this game?" And I plugged myself in, and that's when I realized that my body is just a husk. It is just a mode to get to the real stuff at the time, which was World of Warcraft. But one more thing, we're going to do a lot more as we go along here on the Best Damn Nerd Show in terms of getting to know old stories and who we are and everything like that. But one story that is worth telling before we go to our first break, and that is how John and Tim met. And I will let you two tell that story. So John, go ahead.
obviously, a lot of us here went to San Francisco State. At the time, World of Warcraft, pretty popular game in the dorms and out and everywhere in the world. But I'm running a dungeon, and we keep wiping on something. So I tell everyone like, "Hey guys, I'm sorry to do this, but I have to go. I have to go to class." And I think, Tim, did you ask me what school I went to?
No, you asked me, and also we weren't wiping. We were going through the dungeon just fine. You were just one of those people that's like, I got a bail, and
I
yeah.
don't
Oh no,
do that.
shit, dude. No, that's not what it was, dude. I said I had to go, right?
To be fair, Tim gave the speech at your wedding, so Tim, you take it.
Yeah.
I don't remember what. Dude, you messaged me, right? And we took it to private messages after that, and then we met for lunch the next day.
Goes down in the DM.
Yeah, basically, we went to DMs. We met up for lunch. Super awkward lunch. Did not click at all. And then just pretty much didn't talk for like 3 or 4 months after that. And then
Wait, is that true?
It is true. And then I guess one day he needed someone for a group, or I needed someone for a group, and we reached out to each other. We ran another instance. Then we decided to give it another go for lunch, and we hit it off that time, I think. And then kind of the rest is history. Like we lived together the next year, and that's when we got Davis as kind of our random roommate, and then became quick, fast friends with him. But what's interesting about it is just like the statistical likelihood of us being on the same campus and like being able to meet up, because you have to understand, like, there's 12 million players. There's at the time 12 million WoW players, all split up between Horde and Alliance, and all divided up between like 30 or 40 different servers. So like, in order to communicate with each other, we had to be on the same server and on the same faction, and we had to ask personal questions to even figure out that we both went to the same school, which neither of us ever did in that game. I don't know,
and
what
tell the truth
inspired it.
Yeah, and tell the truth.
Yeah, and tell the truth. Yeah.
Oh, it's important. You like people in video games every day. Like, you talk to people online, you're not gonna like give them everything. So the fact that we ended up being 100 yards apart on a fucking server, when you can play on an East Coast server, you can play on a West Coast server, you can play on a server in fucking China. We have to be 100 yards apart, and we're telling the truth to each other. That just shows how fucking alone and lost we were. You know what I mean? I felt that for sure. I think that's why I went to WoW in the first place. Like, I'm being completely... It was crazy.
I mean, honestly, probably a big reason why we became friends later that year is just because, clearly getting friends in any conventional way hadn't worked. So we were both a little bit desperate. And the prospect of, I mean, for both of us, like our roommates at the time in the dorms, I think the prospect of being matched with random people the following year was just not a good outlook.
No. My roommate was a fucking Japanese international student who thought he was an anime character. He came back with fucking bleach blonde hair one day and would turn the room into a goddamn sauna. I'm like, Utah, bro, like, we can't. He had a sauna machine. He would just plug that shit in, and I'm like, dude, this is our living space. You can't just have everything be damp all the time. So I met John, and I was like, holy shit, he speaks English. Let's like room up, man.
The likelihood of it is always something that is stuck with me, and the fact that you guys did become best friends. I mean, it is like Dr. Manhattan. It is watching air turn into gold. It is a miracle, and a miracle that you two are still friends, given how you treat one another and how we all treat each other. I want to leave it there with the intros, but just to sort of let everybody know, we're going to be talking about a myriad of things as we move forward here on the Best Damn Nerd Show. Nostalgic topics, nerdy debates, all kinds of different stuff that we're going to be getting into. Lots of fun, different types of segments. But I wanted to give you guys, if you're new listeners, a flavor for who we are. Tonight's theme and the main topic, which we will get into on the other side, is reboots. Reboots, remakes, and everything that comes with that. So we're going to be talking about some of our favorite and least favorite rebooted movies, video games, TV shows, all that kind of stuff. We're going to take a quick break. More Best Damn Nerd Show on the other side. And welcome back to the Best Damn Nerd Show. I am still joined by the nerd herd here. However, Chris Segley of Final Boss had a strange business call that he had to take, so we will persevere on without him here. But I want to circle back to the idea of reboots, which we're going to be discussing at length. But why reboot us? Why the Best Damn Nerd Show coming back here today? I mentioned a little bit that our paths have led us back together here. John, why don't you start us off in terms of just the why of Best Damn Nerd Show?
Yeah, I mean, I think there was definitely a period where we all kind of got busy focusing on, like, post-college, starting your career and figuring out what the hell you're supposed to do with your life. And it's really easy to like fall out of touch with friends and not reach out as much as you should. And I think that really came to light at like bachelor parties and weddings and kind of a string of like everyone getting betrothed, and us having excuses and good reasons. Yeah. And good reasons to like come together and hang out again. And more than anything, this is an opportunity for us to all get together every week and just hang out and chat, and might as well record it and put it out. Right. But given that, everyone is pretty much betrothed, and we're going to be waiting a really long time, for James, we don't really have a lot.
You meant for death.
No, for the next opportunity to get together. I just feel like this is really our last chance to kind of hang out because, God forbid, James locks someone down. Oof.
Not looking likely, given a recent turn of events. Kind of a Hail Mary at this point. But
I thought it was because the Russian sex bots finally hacked the server and crashed the site.
that is all. That is part of it. There's a lot of contributions to why Best Damn Nerd Show fell off. Which I'll take my fair share of the blame for that. But John mentioned something in terms of we're all friends, hanging out together, and at SF State and beyond. When we moved beyond that, we built a really cool community here at Best Damn Nerd Show, and we like I said, we appreciate all of that loyal listenership, and we want to rebuild that because that community is something worthwhile. I think that Best Damn Nerd Show had a legacy in the time period that we came around. We were ahead of that curve, and I really believe in what we're doing here. And as it's been alluded to, I really need it. So I am happy to be back with y'all. But Davis, for you, I guess what has you most excited about coming back for the Best Damn Nerd Show? Then
I like that we're like in a men's group. It's cool. It's like free healthcare. I get to talk to you guys about things. So
it's like, where's he going with this?
We've all been to AA, right? So, you get how it is. So,
Davis is recovering.
No, this is very exciting because not only do we get to see each other all the time, but a lot of us have had experiences since, college to where we've improved on our professional abilities, and we were able to do a lot more now. And I think some of the content that we'll be able to put out, I'll be running a lot of the community events, which I'm excited about, which is very closely tied into what I do professionally. I think there's just going to be a lot more that we can do that we're going to be even more excited about because that's what we're actually into now. So,
yeah, I think it's you can't understate like how hard it was moving from the studio at San Francisco State, where we had access to like a mixing board and we were all there in person, to trying to do it online in 2010. When we're like basically hacking Skype in order to do recordings and even like posting podcasts online, you had to like understand code on some level because you didn't have all these podcast hosting services. So really like the barrier of entry is super, super low now. And also, we're adding video to the mix because we can. And I think that's going to be a really cool element to the show.
Yeah. And we got this very cool opportunity with Tenno to come do this, and I just think that's really, really awesome. Because
James gets a $12 bounty every time he mentions Tenno. Yeah,
the worldwide leader in all things nerd, and from where I sit. But Marco, this is actually sort of Mark and I's second collaboration in the nerd world, because we founded the very well reviewed Worlds Collide Comics company
back in fourth grade.
It cut such characters as Badger and Badger. Really
don't trust the two left hands.
That's right. Had to make it that way. But Mark, what do you, what is your? Because you came in, post SF State, and post a lot of post Head Boy and John, really. So what is your just whole take on as we venture back with Best Damn Nerd Show?
Yeah, I first came on to Best Damn Nerd Show actually on a side podcast called Bang Boom Kapow Comic Talk Now, which was a strictly comic book related.
The Comic Talk
podcast.
Now part you added.
It's good alliteration, though. Well, that's what I bring to the table.
Oh, it rhymed.
Not alliteration. That was an English major. I read comics and picture books, all right? But So started back then, and then came onto the main roster, and been on the main roster for at least 8 years, if not longer. So
been on the website for none of that.
Not the new one, I hear.
a running for new listeners, a running gag in truth was that Mark never was on the original Best Damn Nerd Show website. So if we ever do a nerdy trivia, and that's a question, there you go. Jeff, how about you? How are you just feeling about everything? I guess as one of the originals, I've sort of reflected on the fact, just again the legacy of the Nerd Show and why we should bring it back.
I think my favorite part of bringing it back is just that it's the full roster again, because being with you since like episode 1. I mean, there was that part when I moved from San Francisco that I was gone from the series for a little bit, but I mean, I've got to see like the different roster changes. It's kind of like being, I guess, your Cyclops, if we were the X-Men, since you're technically like the Manos. But I mean, it's like I got to see like several of the different iterations, and it's kind of been cool to be part of different groups, but we're strongest when we're all united.
Yeah, I agree, and it's just on a personal note, John rejoining this, there's a sort of wholeness that I feel in this comeback. Tim, somebody that honestly I didn't know if I'd ever see you on here again. Like I think the last time you were supposed to be on the Nerd Show was you doing some accents, and then you bailed. So it's good to see you again.
I didn't like the way that I was being treated, and I just want to say that I disagree with almost everything that's been said. I think the reboot's a bad idea. I don't trust the community, and I dislike and mistrust most of you.
Well put.
And I think this will only.
You haven't even met the community yet.
I can tell you I don't like them.
Lore Master Timothy Childs, everybody. We're going to take another quick break, and then we will come back, and we're going to be getting into all those reboots and all the different properties that we want to discuss tonight. So we will be back with that on the other side on the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back again to the Best Damn Nerd Show. All right, nerds, let's get into it. We are talking reboots. And I want to start in the movie genre here because obviously I think that is the where the sort of idea of reboots and remakes is most front and center. And let's start with Star Trek, which obviously is right in our wheelhouse in nerddom. The original Star Trek and all of the subsequent franchises, most of them at least, are very well thought of. I was actually texting with somebody today who was trying to rewatch Deep Space Nine and was not having a good time. That was my brother. And so he's trying to plow through that. Good luck to him. But the 2009 reboot starring Chris Pine, Zachary Quinto, Zoe Saldana. Carl Urban, yes. Great. Absolutely. So I guess let's start there. I mean, in terms of reboots, in my opinion, Star Trek is near the top in terms of movie reboots, at least with how well cast it was. Like, at the very least, I have some issues with maybe how they did certain things later on in the series, but I think Chris Pine is a top-notch Kirk. Quinto is a great Spock. Saldana, a phenomenal Uhuru. But maybe the best is Carl Urban as Bones. He might be the best cast one of the whole group. Jeff, what did you think? I mean, because I know you weren't necessarily the biggest Star Trek fan of the original series, but you obviously enjoyed the reboots.
The movie actually is what got me into the series. I mean, I had watched some of Next Generation. Actually, no, I don't think I started watching Next Generation until after I saw the movie. So the movie really got me into all of Star Trek. And
I didn't even know that.
Yeah, I think it was like a year or two later I was watching Next Generation like in the middle of the night, and I enjoyed it. I even went back and started watching the original series when it was on Netflix. I don't even know if it still is, and I liked that too. But I thought the first two movies that J.J. Abrams did were both really good. I know a lot of people hate Into Darkness, but I think it's great, especially because I think Wrath of Khan sucks.
Blasphemer.
That is a terrible movie. I saw it the night after I saw Into Darkness, and I could not believe how boring it is.
Mark, do you echo agreement? Do you have a?
And I like the episode of the original series where Khan is on it, so I don't have a problem with that character, regardless of the actor. It's just that movie stinks. Did you hear me, Chris Davis? I said the movie stinks, and all original Star Trek movies stink.
I mean, there wasn't as many lens flares, but it was still pretty good cinema. Gotta say.
A bunch of old people talking to each other. That's what it is. Why don't you just watch
a story? Heaven forbid.
No, a story is where something happens.
Davis, you were personally attacked there. What say you?
The original Wrath of Khan is a classic. And yes, it is slower, but you watch the original series, the series is slower. Like, there's more of a story being told, and there's more going on than just what the new movies became, and was just action all the time. Which is fine. It is, like, the movie should be exhilarating and all that, especially in this day and age, but back then, I think they had to rely more on character development, the plot, and not so heavy on the action part of it. And so I think that there is a disconnect there.
Yeah, tonally, it's a big shift. I mean, if you're looking at like the timeline of the franchise from then to now, it's a big shift. And I think that they're just leaning into kind of like what's working right now for people who watch movies in mass market. But there was something really enchanting about the original series, and like the idea that like every week you have no idea what kind of adventure they're going to go on. And I actually think the original series was better than the original movies. I think like having it condensed into little episodes and like having that consistency and knowing that like the stakes are kind of low, like nothing major is going to happen in an episode. It's just kind of like fun adventures. It just makes it like a fun outlet to watch. I think the new movies, there's a lot at stake. They're super high action. Totally, they're very different than the originals. I could totally see why you would not like the direction that they've gone.
So Star Trek 1 is an abysmal movie. There's no way around it. I love Wrath of Khan. However, I enjoy Into Darkness, except for the sort of just the low-hanging fruit that I must imagine the elevator pitch would have been by Abrams. Like, what if instead of Spock dying and Kirk yelling Khan, we have Kirk die and Spock yell Khan? I thought that was just kind of a lazy sort of invert for the movie, and that is in terms of, I had no problem reintroducing the Khan character, but that was the one part that just didn't really work for me, because it's like, do your own thing, don't because Wrath of Khan, whether you like it or not, the Khan scene with Kirk yelling it is a classic movie thing that has transcended just Star Trek culture. I mean, it was in Seinfeld. It's been in all these different things. You see it pop up time and time again. So to redo it there, I was not a fan of that.
But I mean, I think that's sort of the tongue-in-cheek and wink at the audience, as far as it's an Elseworld story, because it's like a divergent timeline, but there's going to be all of those consistent parallels. And so it is kind of fun to do it that way. I think they should have gone in a completely different direction in the third film. And I think what you do is like you introduce the Borg in that world much sooner, because that's the one crew of any Star Trek series that's never faced them. Every other one has. And it's like you have Bones, Spock, Kirk, all of them facing off against the Borg. That's what I would have done. But I think it's important that the first two stories in that trilogy are kind of like closer to more of the original series, except for with these slight little changes and twists. I thought all of that was really good, and I like the rapport between all of the characters. I think they kind of captured a lot of what was on the original series, which I'm not even criticizing the original series. I did like it when I watched it, and I do think it's fun, and I think there was more action in that than the movies, just because of the age of the actors. But it's limited because it was a television series in the 60s. I mean, you don't have a special effects budget or like a real choreography budget.
So did you watch the original series after you watched like Wrath of Khan?
After Wrath of Khan, after Next Generation, and after the first two films. It was 8 years ago that I was watching it, because I remember where I was living, and it was right around my birthday. It was when you came to visit, when I was in Huntington Beach.
So I think a lot of the people that when they first experience Wrath of Khan, they already have a certain amount of equity built up into those characters. So that movie works because, they're already very invested in all of them, so that it might be why you didn't enjoy Wrath of Khan. I get that you think it's boring and everything like that, but maybe you would have felt differently had you experienced it a little bit differently. I will say the Star Trek reboot, though, is masterful in its use of like the timeline and time travel and the parallel universes kind of deal. That was something that at the time was, how are they going to pull this off? And it was, just pitch perfect with how they used Leonard Nimoy in that. And that was just something really cool that always stood out to me. Is like, dude, they pulled it off. That was great. Go ahead, Marco.
One thing I will say about the 09 version is that it did exactly what a reboot should be doing for different IPs. And that's that it's taking these concepts that have a huge loyal fan following, but opening them up for even newer audiences to experience it. I mean, growing up watching Next Generation and stuff, it was always kind of a little dorky, not gonna lie. Come on.
I love TNG.
But hey, after Abrams' version came out, I felt like Star Trek was never been hotter. Everyone liked it. It opened up a wide amount of audiences of people being like, yeah, Star Trek, like traveling spaceships, lasers, action. Chris Pine, hottie in the pilot seat,
Chris Hemsworth.
It was great.
Too, launched his career.
Chris Hemsworth breakout, yeah. So I think it's really cool. As reboots go, I think it did exactly what it should be used for.
I already feel like Star Trek needs another reboot, though. After that third movie.
Well, not even that, but the television series, too.
And Picard is okay. It's pretty good.
But Discovery?
Discovery, I'm not a big fan of.
Well, I do think, to Mark's point, that Star Trek sort of had never been cooler when the first one came out, and then with the second one, and then the third one was not well received and sort of killed the franchise. I thought it was interesting that Chris Pine's career really didn't take off like I had thought it would after those movies. I want to jump off of Star Trek, though, because we have a lot of properties that we want to cover here. Obviously, we won't be able to cover everything, but let's enter a triple threat match to this, and that is the 3 so far recent Spider-Man movie franchise that we've gotten. The Tobey Maguire series, the Amazing Spider-Man series with Andrew Garfield, and now Tom Holland, the MCU Spider-Man, in quotes, Spider-Man. What I guess for me, like as I sit here right now, I still think Tobey Maguire's series, even with Spider-Man 3, which was an absolute abortion of a film and just really, really awful, comically bad. Just the jazz dance scene, the random revelation by Harry's butler at the end, and everything, like just really awful movie. But even with that in the mix, I still think Tobey's Spider-Man franchise is the best one. Jeff, what say you?
I mean, yeah, it's probably the best one, but that's also because it has one of the best superhero sequels we've ever seen, and maybe just one of the best superhero movies ever. That's Spider-Man 2. There's a lot of solid casting, specifically with Dr. Octopus. I don't think there's any villain I can think of that, like, I just feel like it was taken straight out of the pages of the comics.
I feel like maybe to its detriment too. I actually like Spider-Man 1 better than Spider-Man 2, but one thing that does...
That's because you're an idiot.
Thank you. One thing that does hold it back is, you look at Willem Dafoe's Green Goblin costume. It's bad.
Yeah, it looks like a Power Rangers villain, dude.
It's bad. It does not translate very well. Go ahead, Mark.
The only thing that I tend to think of about the Tobey Maguire one is the change where Spider-Man now actually produces his own webbing versus getting the gauntlets.
Yeah.
But I can live with it. It's something that I feel like a lot of people overlook and never discuss in that rendition of it, where it's something that they did bring through in the subsequent after pieces, like how smart Peter Parker is in inventing these things. I felt like that wasn't played up as much with the initial Tobey Maguire's.
No, I agree with you. I think that is one of the biggest problems with that series. And it was complained a lot about in the first one. I remember a guy who never complains about anything, Kevin Smith, actually took a very public statement about how much he disliked that. So that's the Spider-Man 2099 power, actually, where the webbing comes straight from his arms.
I'd rather have it be his own power and him be doing his own tech and gadgetry than like what they're doing in the MCU, which is have him so beholden to Tony Stark and Iron Man. Like, I really like Tom Holland.
He made his own webbing in the MCU still, because he had webbing before Tony
Stark. And I like that aspect of it, but everything since then where he is outfitted with essentially an Iron Spider outfit and his suit has, all these sort of Tony Stark bells and whistles, everything that he's done in those movies so far has been tied to Tony Stark. We've had nary a mention of Uncle Ben, and we don't need to rehash the origin or his death necessarily in that, but at least mention him instead of like in the first one in Homecoming when he's under the building. That's when you could have him reflect on the "with great power comes great responsibility" moment. But instead, it's some throwaway line from Tony Stark about how like the clothes don't make the man kind of deal. I like Tom Holland. I think he is, perfectly capable of being a good Spider-Man / Peter Parker, but I don't think they've given him anything to work with that really makes him Spider-Man because they've gutted the underpinning of the character, in my opinion. I've not been a fan of how they did it. My favorite Spider-Man villain is Mysterio, and they even tied him back to Tony Stark.
I think it's the problem that these movies have now is that they're just kind of washed out in a giant menu of Marvel movies that come out every year, and it's all just kind of formulaic. I think you have to look at what was happening and what was being released at the time that original Spider-Man series came out, and it really stood out because there wasn't anything like it, really.
Yeah, you're right about that. Davis, where do you stand on the three?
I mean, they improved immensely in the latest just by Aunt May. I mean, we got something
That's
much
stupid
better
too.
to look at.
What, do you not get enough eye candy from other superhero movies and characters?
Thank you. Like Aunt May doesn't. I don't need to want to sleep with
She's
Aunt
an old
May.
lady.
Yeah, Aunt May is supposed to be an old woman. It's awful that they. And look, I like Marissa Tomei, but it's a stupid casting decision. It's so bad.
I love Sally Field.
Okay, yeah, I mean, I was fine with her in the Andrew Garfield series. I guess that's something to Tim. I mean,
Always Sally
are you a Spider-Man guy, Tim?
I'm like not super crazy into it, but I did rewatch the Tobey Maguire ones recently, and I love those movies. Like the campy tone, and kind of like it was before, like John said, this like crush of Marvel and whatever the other one is. Like they're just like jamming them out. It like allowed the film to breathe on its own a little bit and be its own thing, and I think that's kind of like what sets them apart in a way from all of those other like shitbag of movies that came out after that, like that just like they're like, oh, what's the formula? Oh, it's ABC. Okay, let's do that again. Like it's something else, and I like that about them.
Yeah.
Sam Raimi did a fantastic job at putting that all together. It's just very much his style, and it works. Yeah,
they're really fun to watch. Like if you go in with the expectation that you're going to be watching like Thor 2 or something, you're going to be sorely disappointed. But if you just allow it to be its own movie, it's fucking really entertaining.
So far we've pretty much been just talking about Tobey Maguire versus the MCU Spider-Man. What is it about the Andrew Garfield Amazing Spider-Man movies that started off with so much promise? At least I think like a lot of hope from the Nerdosphere that these were going to be really good. Andrew Garfield's appearance at Comic-Con, he seemed to be like taking the character very seriously. What is it about them that they just missed the mark so horribly on? John?
It's just his hair. Honestly, it's just his hair.
Also, I think it was too much emphasis on Norman Osborn, and it was kind of like trying to do that shared universe that MCU does, but it was just going to be all the Spider-Man movies and the grand conspiracy of what happened to Peter Parker's parents and everything like that. That was so stupid.
Yeah, it was something from the character that never really mattered before.
I feel like they stumbled at the starting block, and then it actually got worse in the sequel, which is unfortunate. And it's like, and I hated the sequel, but I remember when we reviewed it on the original series, I think I was the most forgiving out of everybody, which was kind of funny because it was not a good movie anyway.
It was
And
brutal.
I think he's just kind of hateable.
Yeah, I really liked Amazing Spider-Man. I thought it was actually a great film, the first one there. I think the biggest miss with Andrew Garfield is that he was a little too broody as far as Peter Parker goes. A little too dark and mysterious that you don't get with our other two renditions. But I thought like putting in the entire Stacy's storyline is such a phenomenal storyline for Spider-Man, and that's the only representations that we've really gotten for it, and I thought it was actually done really well.
I do like that they included the Stacys. I don't think they... Like, Andrew Garfield, to me, in terms of his Peter Parker, he came off too cool. Like, I don't need Peter Parker, like, skateboarding to his graduation. That was never sort of, I guess, how I viewed him necessarily, and I know he got more confident after he got his powers and everything like that, but I wasn't a fan of Garfield's portrayal. Maybe it's because I'm in terms of who I sided with in Social Network, I was a Zuckerberg guy, not an Eduardo Saverin guy. So I couldn't actually see him as not Eduardo, to be honest with you. But Tim, you were saying something. You find Garfield very hateable?
No, well, I would echo what you said. Basically, I think he doesn't the the character, that guy cast in that role, you don't know who he wants to be. Is he the cool, like, is he a jock? Is he a nerd? He doesn't really fall into either camp. He's like kind of too good looking to be like one of us, but he's like also like kind of nerdy in his own way. So it's like, I feel like on some level he's hard to like connect with as a like cast in that role. But I loved him in The Social Network. I just think he's a bad Spider-Man.
Yeah.
That being said, I didn't see the movie, so I don't know.
Great analysis, expertly done. Jeff, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think everybody who's played Spider-Man has done something to the character that I've liked as far as how they portrayed him as Peter or as Spider-Man. One good thing about Andrew Garfield was there were more sarcastic quips while he was wearing the costume, where with Tobey Maguire, they did it like once and then they seemed to forget about it. And it's not that those movies weren't funny. It wasn't really, though, that Spider-Man was cracking jokes, which, I mean, is a big part of the comics. I would say Andrews does that the most.
Yeah, I would agree with that. That he did that the best, and I think maybe Tom Holland's stride is sort of the bridge between the two. That I think on the face of it, he is very relatable as Peter Parker. He does well with the dialogue while he's in the suit and everything like that. Like in Civil War, I loved his sort of dialogue with Winter Soldier while he was fighting him and stuff like that. His dialogue with Captain America was great. They missed their opportunity to do the "No, you move" speech at the airline fight, but I think something about the Tobey Maguire series that we haven't talked about yet. Talk about casting. One of the great comic book movie castings of all time, J.K. Simmons as Jonah Jameson, is just really, really defined that role on film.
He just signed a multiple movie deal to be that character again.
Which is very exciting to bring him back to that role. I know he in DC was also Commissioner Gordon, and he wanted to do more with that, and he very well may end up doing more with that role as well. So he might be striding both comic book universes there.
I think that another big issue with the Garfield series was it came out so quickly after the first trilogy. Like I don't really feel like we got to breathe after the first trilogy came out, and there's already so many other comic book movies coming out, and then they're just going to rehash Spider-Man. And I think there's a lot of people that were just give it a while, let it breathe, let it sit, and we'll get back to it eventually. But I mean, they just went right back at it, especially when they started with the origin story again too. And that's something good that the Tom Holland series I think did, was just kind of skip that, get through it in the credits, but unfortunately they didn't kind of revisit it during those movies, like you said, James.
I mean, certainly on the plus side for the MCU Spider-Man is that, Michael Keaton's Vulture I thought was excellent. He was a really good villain, although again, what was he doing? What villainry was he doing but stealing Tony Stark's stuff? But be that as it may, his portrayal was very good. So within I think you just hit on something with rebooting with Andrew Garfield after Tobey Maguire. I thought they pulled the plug very quickly on the Andrew Garfield series, and then I think to the detriment of Tom Holland's is why maybe we haven't gotten more of that underpinning of the character, because maybe people felt like, oh, they've already seen it so much, they don't want to see it again. But they've strayed so far from, just some of the key things about him and just tying it so much, the hashtag "it's all connected." To me, there's no greater example of it going too far with that connectivity than in the Spider-Man movie in the MCU. It's really unfortunate to me because I love Spider-Man. I want to like him, and I think his best role in the MCU so far is probably in Civil War.
Yeah, his standalone movies have not been great. Well, I mean, I didn't see the second one, but that's because I hated the first one so much.
Yeah.
Spider-Man is one of the most popular superheroes of all time. He really should be the face of the MCU, especially now with Cap and Iron Man bowing out. It really should all be about Spider-Man, and I mean that's not going to happen.
I mean, I think it could, but I think it's just going
not with the way they're portraying the character, even the way he's entirely set up. I just don't see how it's possible. I mean, he's just constantly doubting himself. I mean, they play him. I mean, age-wise, I think he's totally fine. That's how it should be, at least with him starting off his career. But I mean, I don't know what it is that they can do with him to make him take charge, especially if you're going to start introducing the X-Men, you're going to start introducing the Fantastic Four. You still have so many people. I mean, honestly, with the way they've established characters, why should someone like Black Panther or Captain Marvel, why would any of them follow Spider-Man? I mean, there's no way that characters like that would.
Mark, you're one of the more forgiving on your movie takes and adaptation takes with comic book properties. What have you thought of sort of the MCU Spider-Man verse?
So I will say I haven't seen the second one. Just haven't. Got a 3-year-old. Don't make it out to the movies too much anymore. But I did enjoy Homecoming. And again, as we're talking reboots and remakes and things like that, I like being shown different directions on things. Growing up reading comics, when I started reading them in the mid-90s, Elseworlds at DC, right? Different versions of characters that you're familiar with different takes on them, albeit wildly drastic different takes. And this isn't so much when we're talking about the IP translated in film, but I still enjoy seeing them done. I like the characterization that Tom Holland's been doing. I like Marissa Tomei as Aunt May, given that they did the entire age line down. Missing Uncle Ben, I think, is a critical piece that you should not be missing when it comes to this particular property. Yeah. But I like seeing him as the young hijinks with his friend in high school. I thought that was played up a lot more than what it previously was. Just really embodying him as a young kid with these amazing powers. I thought it did a great job of making that a reality for the viewer.
I want to discuss maybe one of the most universally sort of panned reboots, and that is Ghostbusters. It was set up with people to be against it from the start. I don't think I've ever seen a movie that was just more why don't do this, like. And I don't even think that they should do this Ghostbusters sequel that they're doing. I think this is a property that just leave well enough alone. You did it right. Just let it be. But Hollywood just can't do that. Mark, we'll stick with you in terms of just your feelings on the Ghostbusters reboot.
So, haven't seen it.
No, that's fine.
Throwing it out there. Haven't seen it.
Did you choose not to see it because you were so against it?
Yeah. So one thing with Ghostbusters is those original movies with Bill Murray and Dan Aykroyd, they're cult classics. It's just certain things with cult classic films. No one wants to see them remade because you're always feeling like it's not going to capture the same spirit in which it was done and miss the certain hijinks. It's like almost like you want to see them just remake it, not even reboot it, but you're never going to capture that same kind of magic again. Evil Dead was remade. The classic Evil Deads and Army of Darkness were fantastic. And then they remade that. No one talks about that one anymore. Still a fine movie as it was and scary, but like no one needed it. No one wants it. That's just my gut reaction about no matter what direction and re-envisioning they would have done with Ghostbusters, short of just bringing them back for a third go, the original cast. It's, again, a cult classic film. People like it as is, preserved in time. That's my gut reaction.
Davis, I know you have some thoughts on it.
This movie, I feel like, got way too much hate. And for a bad reason, because it was an all-female cast. And I don't think that's a lie for a lot of people. I'm not saying anybody here, but I don't think a lot of people wanted to see that. I think that bugged a lot of people, and I will stand by that. And I watched it, and I like 3 of the 4 of the actresses, and they did fine. It was funny, it was entertaining. The CGI was awful, and Chris Hemsworth was like their secretary and was actually had a funny role, but it wasn't the same. I mean, it wasn't the same. Like Mark said, you're missing so much of the original energy and the vibe, and yeah, it did come off as like a cash grab, but It wasn't as bad as I think people made it out to be.
I will say I agree. I think it got a very disproportionate amount of hate coming into it. I feel like that was again coming from like the cult status that those original movies had.
I think I actually really liked it.
All right.
Yes, John.
I really enjoyed the movie. I mean, if you went into it expecting like the original Ghostbusters movies, like I totally understand why you would be completely disappointed. I think it's using like the scaffolding and everything else about the movie is completely different, but I think it works as its own thing that shares a name. You know what I mean? Like, I don't think they're trying to take the place of the cult classics or redo the cult classics. I think it's a completely different thing for a completely different audience. The women who starred in it are all hilarious actresses in their own right, and their camaraderie and the jokes that they had together in the movie were really, really funny. And I think it works as its own thing. I think it would have been a horrible mistake to try to redo that film with 4 men and try to like recapture lightning in a bottle the way they did with the originals. So if you're going to touch the franchise at all, you have to do it like they did it. And I think it worked. I think obviously, you know, there's an argument to be made that you just shouldn't touch it. You should just leave well enough alone. But I don't think it harms the original franchise. It doesn't change what existed in history. All it does is add a new thing for a younger audience and for a different audience to kind of enjoy, and then maybe that audience goes back and watches the originals.
You hit on something conceptually there, that in terms of it replacing the originals and stuff like that, which is, for me, I'm a guy that's usually predisposed to not liking remakes or reboots in general for that very reason, because I do worry, and obviously irrationally, that, you know, somebody, you know, that's exposed to the fandom is like, this is what it is, you know. This is what Ghostbusters is like. What is that, like, fake stuff like that you're into? It's like, no, this was the original. This was better. This was that, and it is something that it does affect me, like Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles and stuff like that. It's like, it was this.
Yeah, I hear what you're saying, but I think, you know, you also run the risk of like those movies being kind of out of date and, you know, just kind of washing out in the history of film. And
classics,
like they are classics, but like younger people aren't going back and watching classics. It's like a very specific young person that goes back and watches. Yeah, they should. But I think it's kind of cool to re-engage audiences to a franchise and do it in a way that's
shitty.
That's totally different. Like, I think it's the exact opposite of the Spider-Man problem. Like, you have these 3 Spider-Man franchises that all wash out in this timeline of you know, 4 or 5 Marvel movies a year versus, like, you know, one Ghostbusters movie 30 years later with a completely different take and some nods to the original series, but they're not at all trying to do what the original series did.
Yeah, I mean, so from my perspective, obviously the movie was dog shit, but I do like the whole like Tyler Perry thing where it's like, I think we should remake as many classics as we can with a full female cast. Because let me ask you guys a question and be completely honest.
God damn it, I fall for him every time.
Would you rather watch a man run or would you rather watch a woman run? Like, you're telling me you don't want to see female Spider-Man swinging through the fucking skyline of New York?
We're gonna need
HR. That is Spider-Gwen.
Think about that, dude.
Spider-Gwen. Spider-Gwen's stupid too.
Have you ever seen Supergirl?
Very popular.
Yeah, I know. I weep for the youth because it's a stupid character.
Well, no comic book character is actually popular, Mark. It's a dying industry.
Yeah, maybe that's why Spider-Man is such shit, because they haven't cast a female yet. I say give the women what they want. Cast them.
One of the, disregarding Tim's irrational rant aside, one of the greatest Jeff Budd lines of the original Best Damn Nerd Show series was, and I stand by, it becomes truer and truer every passing day. The best comics have already been written. So
sad fact.
It's a true statement.
I mean, in this conversation right here, we're kind of outlining how the rest of this reboot series is going to go. Where
are we?
James is a hardline, will not like anything new, and
pretty much.
I'm hardline, open-minded to everything, and pretty much just enjoy whatever. And everyone else is just kind of somewhere in the middle. You know, Tim usually just trolling everybody.
Tim's the chaos fan.
Tim really
James
is.
just trying to.
I'm saying what everybody's thinking.
My problem is this, and I'll tell a story about my mother-in-law. She claims to like chicken marsala, right? And she talks about this chicken marsala dish that she had at this Italian restaurant one time years ago. Since then, I've gone out with her and her family, you know, dozens of times. She's always ordered chicken marsala, always hated it. And my question is, do you actually like chicken marsala?
She does. She likes it prepared correctly.
And that's my question to you, James. Do you actually like comic book movies and
Yes!
nerd culture?
Yes.
Because I think there's a cutoff date for James, and I think it's probably around like 1996, where
Bullshit.
anything released after that is shit, and anything released before it is great.
That is complete nonsense, because the very foundation of the original series run, our first episode we discussed Watchmen, which I actually think is a damn fine comic adaptation. Early talking about my goal as a nerd, my favorite superhero, Captain America. I wanted one Captain America movie that I could be proud of and thought that they did well, and I got much, much more than that. I love Chris Evans as Captain America, and to me, First Avenger, Winter Soldier, just two of the best comic book movies ever made. I like plenty, but I will call out crap when I see it. Multiple of you have talked about how the MCU has done things paint by numbers, and that's sort of what I don't like, and what I will rail against is that now in the MCU it seems like they can't even let you feel the full range of emotions without having to punctuate every scene with a throwaway one-liner. They get more and more silly. Look, I know it's about guys in flying suits with crazy superpowers, but if you don't take it a little bit seriously, why should we? And in terms of me not liking, I like Justice League. Everybody piled on to shit on DC. I enjoy Justice League. I didn't need the Snyder Cut to enjoy it.
And I think anecdotally, you're doing a really good job of picking out select titles that you have liked in recent years.
Because I like things that are good.
When you look at the overall wash of nerd-related titles that have come out in the last 2 decades, the overall landscape.
Lord of the Rings.
If you can sit here and say that you've disliked more than you've liked, then I think that you don't actually like this kind of content.
I don't know. I think that is a complete misnomer attack on me. I think I like vastly more. It's just the things that I don't like. I don't go along with this recency bias bump on a log bullshit, which is to praise everything like the latest Thor Ragnarok. Oh, it's the best one since the last one, and the next one will be the best one since that one. It's stupid.
I thought that movie was hilarious.
Yeah, I don't go to laugh. I don't go to laugh.
You don't go to feel anything.
No, I go to feel, but I don't go looking for like a buddy comedy film. I go looking for a superhero movie which has tinges of it, just the right amount, and they've lost the recipe in my opinion. Mark, go ahead.
I was gonna say, it seems like adaptations are always great. I think people always want to see their properties that they love get brought to new mediums and things like that. But I think where James sometimes falls short is he lets IPs take it once. You get one stab at it, don't remake it again.
No, if you
I agree. James is dumb and confused.
If you do it well, let it lie. Like the Lord of the Rings, for instance. I mean, that being said, I am excited about the potential of the new show. Do I think it needs to be done? No, because the Peter Jackson movies are great. So
what about the Hobbit movies?
The Hobbit movies are shit. So there's no.
You're not wrong, but I mean,
there's no way around it. Look, unfortunately,
you guys didn't like those?
Unfortunately, Peter Jackson lost the touch in between making all of that money. He lost his touch. There's no way around it.
That's not his fault, though. He wasn't the one who was starting those films. It got dumped in his lap last second. Studio said, though, you're still going to have to produce them by this point. And so, I mean, everything got forced and expanded. I think it was the studios that said, make it a trilogy again. The Hobbit's one book. You could have probably split it into 2 movies effectively. And then, I mean, they made a lot of mistakes on that, but I don't blame Peter Jackson for all of it.
Yeah, I don't blame.
But when
him for
they
all
reboot
that
it,
and I still actually I would be fine with that. I don't have an issue necessarily with Peter Jackson. I do think he got caught up in some bad decision making, but those
like
Hobbit,
not casting a female Bilbo Baggins.
Those Hobbit movies are bad. Tim, you're on an interesting bent right now. However, I don't know where you're going with this. What about Planet of the Apes? That is another pretty reviled one. I remember leaving that theater. Mark, I might have been with you, actually, come to think of it. I'm not sure, but...
was this the Marky Mark version?
Yes, the Marky Mark Planet of the Apes.
Still never seen it.
Well, good for you. So, sorry to misremember once again memories from our childhood, but I'm really on a roll tonight.
Must have been in, like, 3rd grade or something.
No, we were in middle school, high school. Awful. The Marky Mark one, just terrible. Now when they rebooted it again, I think they got it much more correct. Davis, I know you're something of an ape man, for lack of a better term.
I went through a phase where I was just obsessed with the original Planet of the Apes movies. Most of the first two, but
the first two were always my favorites.
Yeah, the last three are hot garbage. But yeah, I was so excited, and it was right before the new Marky Mark movie came out, and I was so excited for it. And my dad was a big fan. Him, my brother, and I went, and it was so bad. But there was the ending has the General Ape go back to Earth. It was this huge twist in comparison to the original, and he was like the Lincoln on the Lincoln Memorial, and I just became obsessed with trying to figure out how it could happen because it was so convoluted. What I eventually figured out about how it came about, and I don't know why even the writers even thought of that in the first place. But as I'm like, ranting to this about my dad and brother, they just look at me and go, "Why do you care?" It was one of the worst movies we've ever watched together. So, but I got redemption once the DVD came out because the explanation for how it happened, they actually had to put it into the DVD case. There's like a whole slip just for the explanation on how it happened.
It is an atrocious twist. Go ahead, John.
I've never understood Davis's obsession with Planet of the Apes.
Dude, because that's its home world. That's why.
I know. I was around. For many
It
screenings.
seems like a simpler time.
Davis would have thrived in those human tribes.
But now that I think about it, like I think I'm coming to an understanding about it, that just the idea that these ape creatures that mostly speak in grunts and noises to each other, that is, you understand them more than most.
I mean, we lived together, and you guys saw me walk around in my underwear plenty, so you know how much hair I have.
I mean, I saw you walk knuckles to ground a couple times.
Davis is hiding plates under the bed, just going, "It's a madhouse! It's a madhouse!"
Davis, I've described you for years as like a dog that talks. That's generally, if people don't know you, that's kind of just that's like what I say.
Oh my god. Before I move on, does anybody else anybody else want to go ape shit on any of these series?
I just want to say the newest run of Planet of the Apes, the rise of the Planet of the Apes and so forth. To clarify, not really a reboot. They are a prequel series.
That's fair.
But although it is bringing the property to new audiences and so forth.
No, that would still be a reboot though, because they do the Rise of the Apes in the original series. The parents go back in time. I want to say it's the third one is them living in modern times, and then it's Caesar rising up. Their son turns out to be the revolutionary that starts the ape not civil war, but like the ape revolution or whatever.
We're going to go one more film-specific franchise before we take a break and then move on to TV and video games, as we could be here all night. I do. This is something that, shocker, sticks in my craw, but the Disney live-action films, I think, are just, in terms of reboots and remakes, you want to talk about a cash grab? Like those are the definition of it, because, Mark, I know you criticize me for thinking you get one take at it and you're done. Like, the Disney animated movies are absolute classics. And why are you going to remake Beauty and the Beast, which was nominated for Best Picture, and essentially just do shot for shot but live action, when the animated film was so well received that it was nominated for the highest honor in film? I don't understand that. I think all of them are just a complete joke, to be honest. John, I think you feel differently.
I mean, I thought Beauty and the Beast was a good one. I can't say that about the other ones, and I do understand why they're doing them. I mean,
money.
With all this stuff, I think that's like the end goal, but I also think like short term is to connect with the younger audience, and the classics are. I mean, I've gone back and watched so much of that stuff recently, just because it's acting as babysitter when we're both working during the day at times. But the old cartoons, like they're just like outdated in some ways. I hate to
How?
say it.
How?
I hate to say it. Just like the pacing,
Is
the
Aladdin
animation-
outdated?
the animation quality, even some of the music and some of like the
Well,
the
some of
stereotypes-
Disney's music is extremely outdated, but we're not going to touch that.
Nothing from the 90s falls into that realm of it, though. I mean, if you want to go back to the Disney films from like the 60s and 70s, certainly pacing's off. I mean, try to go back and rewatch Sword in the Stone.
It's
Oh
great.
my
Yeah,
It's great.
no, it's
Yeah,
not
hard,
really.
yeah.
The Rescuers, like, no, these things are falling flat with my baby. But Aladdin, Little Mermaid, Lion King, Mulan, Hercules, like that entire era in the 90s are still spot on.
And are all being remade to be live action. So, why? Timbo?
I don't think like I mean I get why it's happening. I think part of the issue too with like the Lion King is you give these fucking lions, you like make them talk like people. It's gonna make people uncomfortable because lions don't talk like people and they look so goddamn realistic and they're like talking. It's like it's like uncanny valley. It's uncomfortable. That being said, like these guys are the producers are doing this because they have like how many archetypes of stories are there? There's like 7 or 8, right? There's not that many. So like why not just remake something that's already good? Plus, they have super time-consuming hobbies, as like we've been finding out. So it's like they don't have that much time to think of new stories. They have this other shit they're doing on the side. That's like it's what they're really doing. You know what I mean?
And animation's already basically a storyboard for the producer to follow.
Yeah, I think it's good.
I think it's bizarre to do Lion King in this style. I think Beauty and the Beast made more sense. But yeah, the ones that are like, and even Aladdin made sense, but like the ones that are predominantly animals, I think are kind of a tough sell. It'd be better to do it as a Pixar, I think.
It was better when it was a talking teacup.
Yeah. For some reason that
good.
felt better. Yeah.
That was better than a talking animal for you.
Yeah, then a talking lion that looks spot on real life. Yeah, I think so.
Okay.
Jeff, I know you liked Aladdin, right?
No, I thought it was okay. I didn't think any of the new songs were that great, and I didn't think they performed the classic songs as well as the cartoon. I thought Will Smith did a much better job than he was being given credit for,
Always does.
but that's about it. I mean, yeah, I don't really see the point in doing what it is that they're doing. What I like about all of the old Disney movies is you take like a classic story. Disney didn't make up any of these stories. I mean, it comes from some sort of folktale or legend or something like that, and they created a cartoon around it. I wish they would do that with just more fairy tales that we haven't gotten Disney movies for yet. I mean, even Lion King, isn't that just Hamlet or whatever?
It's also ripped off of that other story about the lion, that white lion. I forget the name of it. It escapes me right now, but it's like...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah, Disney just like lifted that. And I didn't know about that for the long... I came upon that recently, and it is staggering. Like Kimba is the name of the main lion or something. It's very bad look by Disney.
I do wish they would do more like of the hand-drawn animated films with some of the new, newer fairy tales. As
Princess and the Frog is very good.
Princess and the Frog was amazing, and it shows like when you take that style and it's modernized, like it looks really really good, and I think that there's definitely a space for it.
Yeah. I hate the idea of these live action ones because when you get it right and it's a classic, listen, I think if they didn't do these, and I know you guys said that the pacing is off on maybe some of the very old ones, but I would imagine if they didn't do live action Pinocchio, that kids in perpetuity, for at least the foreseeable future, will still be watching Pinocchio, will still be watching Snow White and films like that. So I really, really don't like the live action Disney movie. But
those movies are a tough sell with kids these days.
Well, I don't have any, so I guess I wouldn't know.
When you show a kid like a Pixar movie, and Pixar movies are like just punchline after punchline after punchline, and then you try to take them back and walk them through like Dumbo, like
you're starting them wrong.
It doesn't work.
You gotta gradually start your kid on an NES and take them up from there. You don't give them the 360 right away. Gotta build it. Anyway, we're going to take a quick break. On the other side, we're going to be talking about TV series and video game reboots that we loved or hated. More on the other side of the Best Damn Nerd Show. And welcome back again to the Best Damn Nerd Show. We are talking reboots here, and let's switch gears to television series, and one that I know is near and dear to everyone's hearts on this show is Battlestar Galactica. You know, we've talked about maybe some of the reboots that were, you know, pretty universally panned, but I think Battlestar Galactica, the reboot, is one that maybe is one of the most universally well-liked in nerddom. So what is about Battlestar Galactica that you like, John?
I thought it was an interesting intersection between like the sci-fi space adventure world and this really intense like political show that transpired over the course of all those seasons. And I think like the added pressure and stakes of the Cylon Force chasing the humans the entire time just made every decision that was made throughout the series incredibly impactful, and all of them had a cascading effect. So like stuff that happened later in the series was a direct result of decisions that were made early on, and you can kind of track it. And I think it's, you know, it's just fun to follow that.
And it was just like super, like morally, it asked a lot of questions, like what is a human being? Like, you know what I mean? It got into a bunch of questions like that because religion is brought in, and it's a real thing out there, you know? And so it's kind of like this whole mythology that's like, you don't even realize that it's unfolding before your eyes. And I feel like I remember John and I don't know if we got those DVDs off like Netflix or we like borrowed them from somebody, but I remember we used to like watch an episode and then just talk about it for like hours afterwards because it inspires that, you know. It's the kind of show that like it's interweaving all of these different things, and you're watching episodes and you're like, holy shit, is this the Jesus Christ origin story? You're like, what, you know, like what are we watching right now? So it's that kind of series. That's how good it is.
I mean, I definitely had moments watching it where I would finish an episode and rather than do what we all do now, like binge watching, like I had the next episode on the DVD I could have started, but instead I took a couple days with what I just watched and just thought about it, because it was like, Jesus, it's intense. Like every moment of it is very intense.
Marco?
Battlestar Galactica was fantastic. I only actually recently fell into it. Jeff has the entire series and lent it to me when I came down with pneumonia. So I got to binge through a whole bunch of it. I thought it was perfect for it. Katie Sackhoff, delightful, gotta say. But in terms of in terms of like doing reboots and things, I mean, I think they did it right because it was an old television series from the 70s.
Yeah.
Right. And they still heralded back to fans that would have enjoyed that with bringing in Richard Hatch to, you know, not reprise his role, but do a totally different kind of character. And so I think you get a lot of that kind of fanfare and love for the original IP, but it's completely presented for a whole new audience. And I think Sci-Fi did just a great job at making characters that you actually care about in this story that was in depth. That it's what I tend to compare a lot of new series and sci-fi film television series that I'm watching is I'm looking for that depth to get drawn into the full story, not just the action sequences.
Jeff, what about you?
I mean, I think it's kind of what everybody's touched on so far. It was the philosophical debates, also just all of the modern arguments and debates that they were having, because this was going on during like the beginning of the Iraqi war. So it was talking about how do you treat POWs, who has authority in different situations, what happens when, you know, the military goes too far in this type of situation. It's like, what does the legal system look like? How does the media and the press get to relate and be a part of everything? You know, what's kept behind closed doors, what's supposed to be shared with the public. That's why some of the actors got to speak before the United Nations.
Davis?
Also Mark, Boomer first, and then Katie. But it's just, there were so many stories on it that also correlated with the current news of the time as well. I don't know if you guys remember, but politically, it actually went really well with what was going on. And maybe that's just because history repeats itself. But so it made you ask questions like John and Tim were talking about. in our current day as well, not just in the series. And it's hard to put any sci-fi TV show up now because people are going to compare that. It's the standard, and if you can't beat Battlestar at this point, it's a quick no for me. It's very easy to turn off because of what we've been able to experience with that.
I think what makes it especially hard to compete with as well is like shows that come out now, special effects are just cheaper and easier to do, and a lot of shows are coming out with better budgets for it. Even some of these like Netflix series, Battlestar Galactica clearly was made on a shoestring budget. The special effects are often terrible, but that's not what the show is about. Like the action sequences, you know, they almost don't matter as much as like the heavy decisions about sacrificing one ship for the greater good of the fleet, and you know, some of the heavy decisions that they have to make, and also I think the fact that it's not a show with aliens in a weird way, like
Sorta.
doesn't alienate a whole cross section of audience. So like people can get into it who wouldn't otherwise like sci-fi, because it's about, it's weird that it's almost talking about issues that we're going to be facing soon too, with automation and AI.
You watch that show and you live for the next like Adama speech, and like how he's going to tell you right from wrong, and like the impactful takeaway that he's going to, you know what I mean, that he's going to like give you. Adama's going to tell you how it is, and that, I feel like that, I don't know, like that, I just love that about that show.
One of the cool things about the show to me is you bring up Adama, one of my favorite characters on the show, but the show fostered like debate and argument amongst us, you know, like especially I feel like with John and I, but even you and me, Jeff, like I do not like Hilo and some of the decisions that he's made on the show, you know, and I understand that he's being portrayed as a very good sort of paragon character, but you know, I disagreed wholeheartedly with some of the things that he did, or you know, maybe I also at times just didn't care for maybe the portrayal very much. But it was one of those interesting shows where there were two sides for you to be on, and there wasn't a clear cut which one was wholly right and wholly wrong, because it was a nuanced show. It was very cool in that regard. And I just remember just a lot of arguments about it with you guys.
Well, Hilo's just more altruistic than any of the other characters. I mean, I feel like anytime he was wrong for the right reasons.
Yeah, I would agree with that. But even like and we have to mention before we move on, Tom Zarek's character, Richard Hatch, which Mark mentioned, a favorite of the fandom and a favorite of this Best Damn Nerd Show here, is just somebody that we were all very sad to lose. And but his involvement in both shows, but really keeping that fandom alive, was very special. So, you know, Richard Hatch is sorely missed. We will do a full nostalgia deep dive on Battlestar Galactica because there's just too much in there to not. But we're gonna move on. Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. You know, the obviously comic book, cartoon shows, movies. There's a lot, the whole gamut. Where do you guys stand on, I guess, what has been good, bad, or the ugly from the reboots? Jeff?
I mean, the only thing that I haven't liked was the sequel in the reboot series, the one where Stephen Amell played Casey Jones and Megan Fox. Oh, well, Megan Fox was April O'Neil in both of them, I guess. I didn't mind the reboot as much as all of you guys did. I thought it was fun. I mean, there were mistakes that they made. Yeah, the hat scene is too relatable. But it was really only the one with like Bebop and Rocksteady that I thought was awful, which is too bad because I was really excited to see the two of them on the big screen.
Marco?
I think every time they reboot Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles, which has been a lot, a lot in the 35 years the property's been around now.
36 this year.
36 this year, yeah.
Yeah.
It's wonderful because it's bringing so many more people in. Like just the sheer amount of television animated series that has gone through. There really is a turtle team for every generation growing up in this period, and they're still quintessentially the same characters. Each of them has their own character archetype that is befitting, which makes the group as a whole relatable. Every one of you probably has your favorite turtle that you feel like you embody, and I always love seeing that. So keep remaking it, keep the property alive. You know, Kevin Eastman needs to eat. So
I mean, if Michelangelo isn't your favorite, you're wrong. But with that being said, like obviously the original cartoon was incredible, and I have a lot of fond memories of that. But the recent cartoon that went from 2012 to 2017 on Nickelodeon was actually pretty good, and was an interesting take on the series, because the animation style, you know, it's like 3D animated, but it's in like an anime style in terms of like how they're presenting the images and how they're telling the story. And I thought it was a really fresh take on the series that was kind of unexpected. And I think honestly, other reboots should kind of borrow from that. Like you don't need to do the same thing. You can refresh the series and try something else, and take different like regional art styles and apply that to it. And I think you get an interesting product.
I will say as we move on now to video games, but before we do, in terms of Michelangelo, was never my favorite in any of the renditions until the modern film reboot.
Yeah.
Like he to me was the clear cut sort of star of the deal. They did a really, really good job with him in that. It's a shame that second one was so bad, because I did have high hopes, afterward in terms of, what they were doing with it. But let's go to video games, because there are a couple big ones we need to hit. And again, we can talk all night. There's so many properties. But let us start with the Legend of Zelda franchise. And Jeff, I know you are a resident Zelda sort of aficionado. I think all of us on this podcast are big Zelda fans, or at least, have had experiences with it. I guess the first question I'd ask you is, I know in terms of where it fits in with the canon, maybe it's technically not, but stylistically, in terms of how much time had gone by, Ocarina of Time, it's in a sense a remake in terms of reintroducing it back into all of our lives. Would you not say that?
Ocarina of Time, not only is it the best Legend of Zelda game, it's just one of the best video games ever made. I mean, there's so much that you can attribute to it. It's like, not only is it the poster child of what a three-dimensional Legend of Zelda game is supposed to look like, but Z targeting was like so innovative. It's like, how has that not been replicated? I mean, it's everywhere. It's in every single video game that's come since. I mean, it's masterful. And then like when you hear about like the making of the game and the different directions that they were going as far as character design, and how like cartoonish Link was looking, more like almost like gnomish type design of like the original series, and that they wanted to replicate a lot of Mario 64, where you're just in Ganon's castle and you're jumping through different pictures to get to levels, which would have been horrendous. And I almost feel like Skyward Sword almost went in that direction when you were taking portals down to the planet of Hyrule. But no, it retells the story. It makes references to the original 4 games. It's just beautifully done, and it's so self-contained. And I mean, that's why, even though it's no longer like the first game in the timeline, it's also like the biggest branching point. It's like that's where the timeline splits into 3 points. So it's still what I would consider the most important game of all the Legend of Zeldas.
What about where do we all stand on Breath of the Wild?
I think Breath of the Wild is a sign of the times. It's kind of like what we were talking about with Spider-Man movies now, and how it just replicates what everything else is in the MCU. It is just a poor man's Skyrim. That's all it is. And that's fine, and that's fun, because Skyrim is fun, and who doesn't like a sandbox game like that with a very loose story? But when I hear people talk about Legend of Zelda, one of their favorite things is the temples. What does Breath of the Wild do? We don't need temples. Temples are bullshit. Let's just do one-room puzzles, and it's like, and you can go and fight Ganon at any time you want. I mean, it's a speedrunner's wet dream, I'm sure, but it's a disaster of a Zelda game. And it's like, and it's so lazy and hack, and you can copy that over and over again, and you're going to get plenty of sales, because that's what people want to play right now, is a game where they can just explore stuff because they don't want to go outside anymore. But it is not a good Legend of Zelda game.
I have the exact opposite take. I think all the best things about Ocarina of Time were present in Breath of the Wild, but done in a contemporary way. I mean, Ocarina of Time, even though there were loading screens and doors that you had to enter to get into certain areas, like it still felt open world. And Breath of the Wild truly was open world, with the exception of going into shrines and all that. But I still got the temple feel from earning all the major powers in the series, and of course, they felt somewhat trivial because you could just skip them and go to Ganon's castle, but still, like the pursuit of them and the like puzzle solving required to get them and to get your master sword, like it felt very much like the Ocarina of Time temples, and I enjoyed that.
I definitely felt like the boss, whether it be the flying ship or whatever creature that you're getting onto, those definitely felt like temples to me. And I'm not as big into the lore, the storyline, the canon, if you will, Jeff, as you are. So on that side of things, I can't speak on, but I mean, it definitely felt like a Zelda game in contemporary times, and there's definitely some problems with it, some gameplay issues that I hope they fix in the next one, but it's mostly just mechanically. But it had the feel of where we're going right now, and I think it was just a nice, different take on a Zelda game.
I will say one thing about the canon of Legend of Zelda. I actually despise the canon and wish that it didn't exist. I think creating the timeline and trying to link all the games together, pun not intended, it's like that's what ruined the series to a certain degree. Better to keep it like Final Fantasy, where they're like, not really connected.
It always felt so trivial. I mean, bottom line is, Princess is in trouble and young Link has to go save her from the bad guy. Like, it's pretty much it. Sometimes she appears and she's kind of a badass in and of herself, and that's cool too. But like that's pretty much the extent of the story from what I get when I play through them.
Well, she's dead in Breath of the Wild, right? She's dead.
Link and Zelda are still alive. They failed like in the beginning of the story, and then it's the two of them trying to like save it later on.
Tim didn't play through the whole thing. I got a text message from him. Like he texted me one day and he's like, I just got a Switch and Breath of the Wild. I'm super excited. And then like the next day he texted me and he was like, yeah, no, the first time my fucking my stick broke, I quit the game and haven't played it since.
Dude, honestly, like I probably had like 10 hours total gameplay in that game. And the reason I stopped playing is because I felt like the combat was completely like start, stop. My fucking weapon breaks. Oh, like, and I get that they're trying to create sort of like a sense of like maybe desperation on some level. Like you got to sort of like scramble to get your next weapon, or like if you're out of weapons, you got to grab something, whatever the fuck it is. But like, I do not like my sword breaking in a game and I can't fix my sword. There's no meaningful progression with your character at that point. Like I play a video game like that to make my weapon into like some like flaming cannon thing I can like blow enemies up with eventually. I don't want to get a cool sword and then break it an hour later. That is terrible. It's a terrible feeling.
I think that's probably where the game fell short the most, was that like RPG progression and like leveling system. Like obviously you do get powers from progressing through the game and you get more life and stamina, but like the armor, like the utilitarian like items that you get, getting swords that are progressively more powerful, that would have been nice.
And you have to pause the game to change things. Like if you're in a fight and you want to use a different power, you have to pause the game. Or if you want to switch your weapon, or if your weapon breaks, you have to pause the game. That is like that. It's crazy to me that anybody would put up with that. I mean, I could not stand it. I really couldn't. That being said, Ocarina of Time, I loved. I grew up on that game. Ocarina of Time was amazing.
Yeah, climbing was ridiculous. That was so infuriating. If it rains, you can't go anywhere. Mm-mm. You're just stuck. So, have fun. And watch
you
the
love
weather.
Breath of the Wild.
I do. But that part of it really infuriated me. I got stuck some places.
You get the reward of being able to fly around after you climb something really tall, which is cool.
All right, I want to move on to World of Warcraft. This will be our last reboot to discuss with tonight. I'm going to kick it over to you, Tim. You are the lore master of the Best Damn Nerd Show, which is a title you got from World of Warcraft. So what is your take on the state of things and the reboot, as it were?
First, ask me a lore question, like any lore question. Go.
We've already done this. We're not doing it again.
Okay. Well, I think WoW Classic was made for a very like small local community, or like population of the community. Like I think it was essentially made for streamers that like cried daily about not having classic WoW, that like thought they would harken back to a time when they were 15 years old and like they had the day off in high school and they could just play World of Warcraft all day. Because essentially what's missing in the current retail version of World of Warcraft, like the most up-to-date version, is that you can it's an MMO. So you have to get on the game and you have to play with other people. You can get on the game right now and not talk to anybody ever and do 99% of the content. And that's not what the game used to be. The game used to be, if you want to get something done, you have to talk to people. You have to like make friends and they have to help you out. It's like you scratch my back, I scratch your back. That's the game was built upon that, and it's gone away from that because of an aging audience and, you know, a lot of like factors. So essentially the reboot in this case was a revert back to WoW Classic, which was of course a disaster. I mean, you have these like popular streamers coming in with their whole communities and they just would take over servers essentially, and it was just a shit show. So anyone that thought WoW Classic was going to be good is just a fucking idiot.
Old words. Lore Master.
I think like leading up to WoW Classic, there was this nostalgia that was misplaced. People like misremembering the game back in 2004 when they were initially playing it. And a lot of people were talking about like the old raids as if they were like incredibly difficult. Like what we do now in Battle for Azeroth or like Legion, which was the expansion prior, is so much easier than what people had to do in Molten Core or in Blackwing Lair. And they really had people going. Like they were like really jazzing people up, and a lot of people who play the game now had never played back then, so they were watching videos of these raids and they're like, oh my god, it's going to be so hard when this finally comes out. And then the game drops, someone gets to level 60 in like 4 days or some shit like that, and they clear the raid like the first night that it comes out with like full greens, and half of their raid isn't even level 60 yet. So the like nostalgia and like the idea that everything used to be harder in 2004 is a complete fabrication. Like it's not based on any sort of truth, any kernel of truth.
I mean, I totally get what Tim's saying in terms of WoW getting away from, you know, how you originally experienced the game. And honestly, how you originally experienced the game is what drove me away from WoW. It was a time factor. And for me, as somebody that obsesses over the lore, you know, you don't get any sort of climax to some of that lore if you can't raid. And raiding is what takes the most dedication of time. But at that point in my life, I did not have the time to do that. So it's just like, well, what's the point then? So that's actually what drove me away from it. I know Tim's tried to bring to bring me back more and more. Wait, what was that?
He said the game would be made for you now, and I agree. It is for people like you now that like keyboard turn and like have to click your spells and are like, how do I get to the fucking Ice Crown Citadel? It's for people like you. You know, it's like they after you quit, James, they made something up called Raid Finder, and it's like pre-made group. You can now do the highest content in the game with a group of random fucking people just like yourself, and you guys can kill the biggest boss in the game and like get the loot. Raid Finder killed World of Warcraft.
What's great about Raid Finder too is like if you want to experience that lore and like experience that content, which you know releases every few months, they release a new raid or new wing. You can do it. Anyone can do it. Like the barrier of entry is very low, and it's so easy that the mechanics like oftentimes are just visuals. Like they don't even do damage to you, so you can just kind of like AFK and kill the boss. But also they have a feature. What is it called? Desperation or perspiration, Tim? Something.
Determination.
Where every time your raid wipes, you get like a 5% increase to your health, your damage, and everything else. So like at a certain point, you have like triple the health that you had originally and damage and everything else. But raids will still wipe because that's the class of players that are signing up to do Raid Finder, James, and it's literally built for you. Like you are in that subset of players. All you need to do is resubscribe and you will get the best gear, you'll experience the best raids, all of that right now. You don't need any mechanical skill or intellect at all.
That was always what was amazing to me about James playing WoW is that he never got better. From the first day he played until the last day he played, there was no improvement that I could see.
It's shocking. It's a shocking feat to spend that many hours doing something and not improve at all.
I had a great time In my opinion, I was way better players than you because I enjoyed the world that they gave me, and I learned about it, and I loved it, and I miss it. And I've really missed this too. This has been a lot of fun. I know, we could go on all night about all these rebooted properties. It was a very ambitious first topic, but given that we're rebooting the show, I think it was an appropriate one. That is going to do it for this edition of the Best Damn Nerd Show. Have a great week, everyone, and remember, if you're a nerd, always say it loud and say it proud.